Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Dave's Math Channel. I'm your host, David Tare, and this is my continuing feature on the Math Lovers book, which I'm now doing every few days, not every day like I was before, because I'm doing another feature as well, my daily math problems I'm featuring on the Facebook group Classical Mathematics. But anyway, today I'm making another video on the Math Lovers book, and this is a continuation of my sub-series on loops, which is part of sequential programming. Last time I talked about if then else, and if then else if else loops. Today I'm going to talk about another type of loop, namely for loops. So anyway, let's begin. So what is a for loop? Well, a for loop, remember a loop is something that does something conditionally. Well, remember with if, it only does something if some condition is met, and otherwise it can do something else if it's an if else. For actually does something a repeated number of times. This is useful if you want to do a particular task, several times, and it could be a lot of times if you want. It's one thing computers are good at are doing repeated tasks because they work very, very fast. I mean, with basic operations in about a nanosecond, could do, run a loop 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. You don't even have to wait that long, depending on how complicated the code is inside the loop. But anyway, a basic for loop has this structure. So we have an index. So it has a form for, and then you have some variable which we call I. I is a common name for an index. It's an integer in type variable that can range from some lower limit to some upper limit. So for instance, we would say I min. I min might be 0 and I max might be 100. That would be a loop you're doing 100 times, actually 101 times if you're using less than or equal. Um, and then we say I plus plus, that just means increment I by 1 each time you go through the loop. And it doesn't have to be incremented by 1. There's other fancy for loops where you can decrement the index, or you can jump, you can skip, you can go through odd indices, you can skip whatever way you want. But this is the simplest type of for loop. And this is pretty much the same in every language. I think just about every high level programming language has a for loops in it, and they all have this basic structure. The way I wrote this is close to C, and they might look a little bit different in other languages, but they basically look like this. So you're running some code some finite number of times, and then, the code might depend on your index, in which case the code does something a little bit different depending on what the value of I is. But anyway, that's how a for loop looks. Yeah, now that I've told you what a for loop is, I think it's a good idea to go over some examples. So here's a simple example. Remember, our first example was Hello World. That's usually the first programming, exercise that students are given when they learn how to program in a given language. Well, this is a little bit of a take on that one, except this time we're writing it 10 times. Of course, we could just tell the computer, hello world, hello world, hello world, have 10 statements, say hello world, but we don't have to do that. I mean, we can put it in a for loop. So here's how you would do this with a for loop. We have a for loop where the index is going from 1 to 10 because we're doing it 10 times. And so each time I get, so the first time we go through this loop, I is equal to 1. It prints hello world. And then it has a black splash N. Remember, that just means new line. We don't want it to write hello world all on the same line. We want to write it on 10 separate lines. So it'll write hello world one time, and then it'll exit the loop and increase I by 1. Now I is 2. And since I is still less than or equal to 10, it'll print hello world again, second time. And then it'll exit the loop, and now I is 3. And it'll do it again. As long as I is less than or equal to 10, it'll keep repeating this instruction, print hello world, a new line. Finally, when it gets to 10, it'll do it one last time. And then when it exits the loop, I is now 11. And now since 11 is already bigger than 10, it won't do the loop anymore. exit the loop and go to the next instruction, which is return. That'll end the program. So, we didn't have to end the program. Maybe could have told it to do something else after this loop, but we didn't. So that's all the program does. It writes hello world 10 times. So that's a pretty simple example. And then for another example, here's one where the thing inside the loop actually depends on your index. We want to write the numbers 1 to 10 in order. So just count from 1 to 10. So that's kind of the same idea, except here instead of printing hello world, we're printing the value of I. So the first time through the loop I is 1. It'll print 1 and a new line character, and then go through the loop again. I is now 2. It'll print I, which is 2. So it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. And then once it prints 10 and it goes through the loop again, I is now 11, so it doesn't do the loop. It goes past it and it returns. So that's what this one does. And I have one more example here. Um, Suppose we want to write not just the number of 1 to 10, but their squares as well. This is where computation comes in handy. So we can make a table of all the numbers from 1 to 10 as well as their squares. And there was nothing magical about 10. We could have done this from 1 to 100 or 1 to a million. You get overflow probably for a million, but we could do it for 1,000 without getting overflow. We'd have a very big list. But anyway, this just goes from 1 to 10. So I starts at 1. It's going to print I and then a tab. This is another statement I haven't gone over yet. Backslash T, that means tab. So it'll print I and then a tab. That just means a space before the next thing it writes down. The next thing it's writing down is I squared. Remember the caret symbol I talked about when I was talking about arithmetic expressions? I caret 2 means I squared. I could have written I times I, but I prefer I squared. So, the first time through the loop, it writes 1, tab 1, because 1 squared is 1. The second time through the loop, it writes 2, tab 4, because 4 is 2 squared. Then I'll write 3, tab 9, 4, tab 16, and so on. Finally, I'll write 10, tab 100, because 100 is 10 squared. And then, I is now 11, and it won't run anymore. It'll go to the next statement, which is return. So I think you guys can see it. It prints out a table of all the numbers from 1 to 10 and their squares. So for loops are very useful. And I hope I've convinced you of that. So that completes my video for today on for loops. Thank you for watching. Long live math. And I'll see you guys next time.